We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
It's been a wild week in the world of lawfare, from Julian Assange's extradition order to Andrew Cuomo on the hook for some big bucks. It seems that the courts never sleep. And one who has suffered from a lack of the healing dream state is our constant court watcher, constitutional lawyer, and host of the excellent Uprising podcast, Mr. Scott D. Cosenza, Esquire. Welcome back, Scott.
Cheers, Mark. Thank you.
So the first thing I want to ask about is the Assange extradition. Now, I thought this was all over and that he would be serving whatever sentence he has in Britain. So why is he now being brought to the US?
Well, the Biden administration is continuing on with the Trump administration's effort to see him extradited for, plainly speaking, as a journalist, Mark, it's the crime of journalism. The way that they're couching the charges is that he encouraged someone to basically break security protocols for classified information. But really what he did was just standard journalistic procedure, which is to ask a source for the information that they're willing to provide and to ask
for corroboration of the information.
And to provide more information. That's exactly right. It was just good journalism that Julian Assange was doing.
A sad state of affairs for journalism across the world. Now, let's head to the West Coast for a moment. In the wake of the Texas abortion law, California's Gavin Newsom, he's threatened that he's going to use the same framework against the Second Amendment that Texas used to craft its own law against abortion providers. Now, is this as crazy as it sounds? And probably more importantly here, is it on any solid legal basis?
Well, the United States Supreme Court just declined to strike down that Texas law because of the way it was structured. So it provides a private cause of action where any person can basically sue a Texas abortion provider for providing an abortion under the Texas law. And it was crafted specifically to avoid kind of Supreme Court review of anything beyond the mechanics of it. So I hate to say it's sound because it's madness in terms of shutting down lawful commerce in firearms, but it does have, it does have purchase in terms of the exact mechanics that were used in Texas, Mark. And in fact, I think it's the Firearms Policy Coalition filed an amicus brief in the Supreme Court case, but they have argued that before Mr. Newsom even came out with this, that this could be used against gun owners, gun manufacturers, gun sellers. And that's one of the reasons why conservatives should oppose that Texas abortion law. And the facts seem to agree with it. If you apply the Supreme Court's recent reasoning to the Texas law, to this imagined California law, then I think the answer is yes, sadly.
But it seems to me, Scott, the Texas abortion law is only for in Texas. So, for example, a private individual can't sue an abortion provider in Tennessee, in Kentucky, in California. So how would it apply to gun manufacturers, distributors? Now, would that only account if they are distributing firearms in California? And is there something to prevent lawful, legally able gun wanters to travel out of state and then bring their legally registered gun into the state?
Mark, if the exact same ideology and mechanics of the Texas abortion law were applied to firearms in California, then you're right. A Californian could leave the state to then purchase a firearm. But there's a hiccup there, which is that firearm sales are restricted if you buy a firearm in a state that you are not a resident of. In some states, this is easier to accomplish than others. And with long arms, it's easy to accomplish rather than for handguns. So it could actually be very restrictive and prohibitive for Californians, as if they needed another obstacle in their path to legally acquire a firearm.
Just in addition to this question, Scott, so Gavin Newsom recently said that if Roe v. Wade, or of course Planned Parenthood v. Casey is in any way driven down by the upcoming Supreme Court judgment, that he would look to make California a sanctuary state for abortions. And that would include, according to him and the foundation which he helped start, paying for the travel for people to travel into California, paying for the actual act of the abortion, hotels, things like this. Now, could Texas do the same thing and become a sanctuary state, in which case the taxpayer of Texas invites people to come to Texas to buy firearms from California and pays for them and then sends them back to California?
Well, no, I don't think that they would be able to do that. And honestly, it is just reeling from hearing that's an actual, I mean, the idea that the put upon taxpayers of California would be further burdened. I mean, just to even take away the moral and other issues surrounding the abortion question and procedure and result, the cost outlay to have, I mean, it is madness. I think that one thing that we wouldn't see happen in Texas is that while they may pass a law to make a point, they're not going to soak the taxpayers to the point that that Newsom's willing to do to, I mean, oh my God, wow, I just can't believe it, Mark. It's just the travel and the lodging and the procedure in order to make a point because he didn't like a Supreme Court decision, that would be, you think about the people in California that are just making it, right? You know, that are just getting it together and not on the dole and not in government assistance with their meeting their financial needs. And then you add this burden that they should be responsible for the unwanted pregnancies of people throughout the 50 states. Oh God.
But they will have the grace of knowing that the governor, Gavin Newsom, is proud of them morally for footing the bill.
Well, we're not even going to get into the moral question here. That is, my Lord.
Now, Scott, I want to ask you about Andrew Cuomo. Now, he's being ordered to return 5.1 million smackaroos from pandemic book profits to the state of New York.
It's the feel-good story of the year for conservatives, Mark. Absolutely. I mean,
now, presumably,
what could be better?
This is because he should have been working for the people of New York State when he authored the book, correct?
The Joint Commission on Public Ethics voted 12-1. That's a state body that controls whether or not certain people, including the governor, are allowed to keep money they earned outside of their job, voted that he has to return this book money. And I think it's because of the scandal that he brought about, you know, on himself and to the state.
That's my follow-up question, Scott. Did this committee only vote this way because Andrew Cuomo is now in disgrace, now that he's been forced to step down? If he hadn't been, would they have let him keep the money and serve out his term?
I think yes. They had initially voted that he was able to accept this money on behalf, you know, for the book sales. So, you know, once the world turns against you, the world turns against you. And I think that's what's happened here, appropriately so, certainly in former Governor Cuomo's case.
So is nobody asking questions about whether this committee is fit for purpose? I mean, if it can be swayed by such public opinion and outcrying, it voted first that he should be able to keep the book advance. I believe it's an advance rather than profits. And now it's voting that he shouldn't be able to keep it because he's in disgrace. Surely that shows that what they're acting from is pride and passion and public outrage rather than following law and regulation, which is what you'd presume a governing body who is committed to upholding certain standards would follow.
It's a political process. It's a political body appointed by politicians. That's how it's conceived.
All right, and a final issue to cover here, Scott. So at a Colorado elementary school, there's a sign promoting, and I quote here, "Families of Color Playground Night." Now, is this a museum piece held over from the 1940s, or has Colorado gone so far woke that it can't see what it's doing?
Segregation now, segregation forever. That's the cry of the liberals there, Mark. It is not a holdover from a bygone era, but it's the new era of segregation and race favoring for folks of color. This is Centennial Elementary School, and Colorado has an interesting law where it specifically prohibits treating pupils in the public schools differently on the basis of their race, in addition to all the other laws we have, civil rights acts that prohibit this kind of thing. And of course, that school system is a recipient of federal dollars through many mechanisms which prohibit this sort of activity. But will there be an appetite to come down on them, legally by the liberals in the Justice Department or the Colorado governance? Well, I think we know the answer to that, and it's a big fat no.
Thanks ever so much for being here.
Cheers, Mark. Thank you.
And that's all we have time for on this edition of Liberty Nation Radio. I want to thank our guests, Lisa K. Donner, Owen R. Arm, Scott Cosenza, and of course, longtime host of this here show, Tim Donner, for taking part. And as always, extend my thanks to you, the listener, for making everything worthwhile. One final thought for you before we go. Famed author Ray Bradbury wrote in his classic book Fahrenheit 451, the average TV commercial of 60 seconds has 120 half-second clips in it, or 1/3 of a second. We bombard people with sensation. That substitutes for thinking. Perhaps it's time for us all to take the news media as we would any other form of sensationalism. If we keep buying it, they'll keep making it. And to remain free, to maintain liberty of the mind, we need to start thinking for ourselves once again. Thanks for listening. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.